So it was more organic, Sid. I didn't plan to be a leader or anything of that. It just happened. Well, Sid, actually, the good part about being an average student or slightly above average student is after a point of time, people don't have too much expectations from it. But for most of us who finally get into something, it's important to start loving it.
Sometimes you feel, I might have to give up this value for this growth. Did you have that internal battle too?
This famous thing that I tell people, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
I want to understand the turmoil that you must have gone through. What was that?
Sid, I can't even imagine thinking about this because I remember that day, March 22nd, if I'm not mistaken, 2020, when the lockdown began. We just called every customer and we actually found out what's happening on the ground.
What do you feel about this whole concept of renting versus buying?
But I think there is no greater joy in owning your own house.
Why do Indian cities don't make it to the most livable cities in the world?
Oh, that's a thing that has bothered me as well.
Kalina ka ladka, yes, a boy brought up in Kalina in 2024 from humble backgrounds becomes the CEO of IndoStar Home Finance. The journey of the brand, the highs, the lows, the struggles, and journey of this human being who made the brand his baby, his child. What an incredible story. Shreejit Menon, how are you?
I'm good, Sid. How are you doing? Good to catch up with you, man.
एक बैकग्राउंड मैं बताता हूँ सबको, ठीक है? So Shreejit and me got on a call, and then suddenly he says, "You know what? We were in college together. We were in college. That means we are actually meeting each other. कम से कम 30 साल बाद."
30 साल के बाद, बिल्कुल.
तो कैसे लग रहा हूँ मैं?
अरे, you're just the same, यार. थोड़ा pounds, a little extra. That's about it. Same here.
Yeah, really. But immediately when I saw you after 30 years, I could recognize the face.
Right.
थोड़ा इधर उधर हो जाता है. Length और breadth में.
Bound to.
But it's okay. We enjoy that too.
Absolutely. Wonderful to catch up with you.
First of all, on a very, very genuine note, I'm so proud of you, यार. अपना college का बंदा जिसे इतना प्यार मिला है, respect मिला है. I feel very happy, man. I get very emotional when I hear about my college friends doing so well. So I'm very proud of you, brother.
Thank you,
I
buddy.
mean that.
I have similar feelings for you, buddy. You've done so well in your career, yeah. So, Anamites are rocking it, yeah.
Yeah, Anamite, Zindabad, Narsi Munji. तो मैं जाना चाहता हूँ. I want you to relive that boy from Kalina. I want to understand about your family. I want to understand your mindset. Because somewhere deep down, there are a lot of our friends who watch who believe that Shreejit sir कर सकते हैं, तो हम भी कर सकते हैं. Let's get back into flashback mode.
Sure, great. So, I was born and brought up in Kalina. My father worked for Air India. As you know, Air India colony is close to the airport. And so, as I started my life, we lived in a society very close to the university campus. Of course, I did schooling there in a school called Kalina Education Society High School. And that upbringing, the way my parents were, we were from middle class backgrounds. My dad did that 9 to 6 job. He used to do overtimes just to ensure that we can get that, that getting that one extra cold drink in the house was like you had to earn it, right? And so my mother was a homemaker, but she really kind of shaped mine and my brother's, personality. So a lot of what we get, I think we get from our mother.
Did you always have it inside you कि मुझे एक दिन leader बनना है? कुछ लोग होते हैं जो बोलते हैं मैं go with the flow किस्म का इंसान. I'll just live one day at a time. And some people, very early on, they know which direction they're headed to. How were you?
Well, in my case, a lot of what I became, I was actually shaped by my elder brother. My elder brother was about 7 years older to me. So in some sense, he was like my early idol. I looked up to him on what he did. He was a very outgoing kind of a person. He was a social bee, he networked well. And so when I was, getting bigger, my parents actually moved out of the city for about 2.5 years. My father got his posting in a place called Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam. And when I remember I was in the 5th standard, me and my brother, we were actually living with our cousins. And I think that was, in some sense, my getting into, so to speak, what do you say, when you go abroad, no, when you go out of the city and you live alone, that kind of a thing, but you are in your own house, but without your parents, that really formed me. I kind of started getting used to the fact that I don't have the comfort zone of my parents. It was like boarding school, right? But it was within the own city. So I think that changed me as a person. My grades started dropping, but I really didn't mind because I was topping till my parents were around, and then my grades started dropping suddenly. And then my brother got into his management, and so I said, look, this thing looks good. So kya karna hai? So he got into commerce. So I said, let me get into commerce. So it was more organic, Sid. I didn't plan to be a leader or anything of that. It just happened.
But I've noticed that at that phase, when your parents weren't there, in fact, there was a phase when my parents were not with me, and I had the same problem, which I don't say is a problem now. My grades dropped a lot, right? But in return, I got the gift from life, which is survival instincts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure you developed that as well, which led to what you're doing now with your company.
Exactly, Sid. I think a lot of, and I'm a firm believer of that, a lot of what you are today is actually the conditioning that you go through in your childhood. And I think for me, that conditioning was very important. The fact that I had to hold my own. It was a short period of time. My mother came back quickly within a year and a half. But in that period of time, I'd pretty much, in some sense, become independent. I'd learned to handle my own failures. And then, I got pretty decent grades in the 10th standard at that time. And then moved into college. NM, as you know, was a decent commerce college to get in. And so it was a pride and a privilege to get into NM.
So you got into college.
Yeah.
Then what?
Well, college was a shot out of the blue, right? I mean, we come from very simple backgrounds. And then I still remember in my class, there were these kids from Jamnabai and Utpal Sangvi and, the high-flying kids from Juhu sitting right next to you. And then I was thinking to myself, did I come to the right place? Because you start, the way they look, the way they dressed, it was quite intimidating to start with, Sid. And the first thing I decided was, I think I need a wardrobe change, right? So I went to my brother and I said, look, I don't think these t-shirts are quite the right t-shirts to get into college. So kya kare? What do we do? The bhai said, yaar, Fashion Street hai. Let's get to Fashion Street. And I remember going with my brother to Fashion Street, shopping for clothes because we could afford, quantity mattered for us, because we needed variety और पैसे तो उतने ही थे. So we went to Fashion Street and we shopped for clothes. And then, after I started wearing some pretty decent, branded clothes coming into college. किसको पता था कि वो Fashion Street का माल है?
And you bought those codes.
Yeah.
You felt good about yourself.
Yeah.
You entered college.
Yeah.
Did you sail through college easily?
Oh, college was a sail through. Those days, and the college that we were in had a lot of extracurricular activities. So I think one of the things that we did by virtue of the group that we formed is we started participating in a lot of those ad match shows, and we had small events happening, the literary association events, and so that confidence of going on stage and actually we won a few events in college, and so your confidence level went up. I used to do some decent singing, so I participated in singing events, and slowly the friend circle and the network kind of went up. So I think college played a very big part in kind of molding me as a person. I think in school I was a little more introverted, I was a little more shy, but college really opened me up, and I'm so glad that I did that college because part of what I am today is shaped in those 5 years.
Did you maintain the momentum of the good work that you did in college, or did you lose track?
Well, Sid, actually, the good part about being an average student or slightly above average student is after a point of time, people don't have too much expectations from you. And, that takes the load away from you, right? So in some sense, by virtue of being that above average, it was easy to maintain the grades. And commerce wasn't too difficult, right? You could manage to do all your extracurricular stuff, do your college and sail through college. I think what was important is once the degree was completed, then what next, right? And that's where I think the fact that I'd seen my brother complete his post graduation in management and particularly doing marketing. I think that seeing the stuff that he was doing, the projects, it kind of attracted me as well to get into management. And so I immediately got into a B school. I wrote my Mumbai University, entrance exams, and I got lucky. I got into a college called SIS. You would know SIS
Of course.
quite well. It was forming its management institute those days in Nerul, so it was pretty far, which was good. So you got a feel of a campus and a travel, and also do your post graduation. So yeah, I think that was the next step for me.
So SIS also done.
Yeah.
But in 2017, you created your own baby. But I would like to be told about that journey where you were the first employee of IndoStar Home Finance.
Yep. Yeah.
The first person to come into this sphere.
Yeah.
Was that intimidating? Was that also a decision out of choice? Was that stomach churning moment saying, I am the first employee, so मैं कहाँ जाऊँगा? I'm not in a comfort zone because a lot of people love being in an organization which is already flying and you enter and you carry on the momentum.
Yep.
But here, your momentum could have been created or it could have flipped the other side.
Oh, yes. So it's important for me to give you a little bit of the background. I actually hadn't planned getting into housing finance in the first place. It so happened that in my last year of my post-graduation, a few companies came onto campus, and the company that selected me finally was HDFC Limited. And so I got into housing finance by virtue of that campus selection. At that point of time, we just needed a good job, with a good brand. And HDFC was a pretty decent brand to land up your first job. That's how my whole career in housing finance started. But Sid, one of the things that I've learned along the way is not everybody is lucky like you to follow your passion or your hobby and take it and make it your career. But for most of us who finally get into something, it's important to start loving it, right? So I started loving the whole business that I was into. The fact that I loved meeting people, the fact that I loved networking, this business gave me the opportunity to network with developers, network with customers. It's a retail business. And the best thing about that first job was they just threw you into the pond and you had to go and swim, So I think my formative years of housing finance, I spent a good 5 years in that first job. And then I kept moving into organizations where I did housing finance for a living. And 2011, when this whole buzz around affordable housing was beginning to catch everybody's attention. And it's a little different set from the regular housing finance. The regular housing finance is for people like you and me, people who file returns, people who have incomes on paper. And so there are companies financing those customers. Affordable housing finance was particularly focused on customers that were not serviced by the banks, And so I thought this is a good way to get back into housing finance because I'd made a little bit of a detour into HSBC, into a different kind of a product. And I realized, hey, what am I doing? I need to get back to my core, which is housing finance, but get into something which is like a sunrise industry. So nobody had known about lending a 15-year loan to, let's say, a kirana shop vendor or a chai wala or a vegetable vendor, because that's the profile that we were lending to. Generally, people gave it for smaller tenors. This was a loan given for a longer tenor. So it was an industry which was taking shape, but it was a massive opportunity. And I said, let me take that punt. So the risk-taking guy in me took that punt. In 2011, I set up, again, I was the first employee, set up the business there with a South-based lender, then with a North-based lender in 2014. And 2017, finally, I got an opportunity to head the company. And that's how I joined IndoStar. So 2017 was really a kind of a pivotal moment for me. It was also the time when my second son was born. So the time when I was in the hospital with my wife just having delivered my second child was the day that I got my offer letter as well for this job. So
he brought in a lot of good luck, huh?
He brought in a lot of good luck. I have two children, Sid.
How old are they?
Two boys. My older boy is 14. His name is Arjun. My younger one is Arav, who's 7 exactly, Jan 2017. And my wife, Radhika, she's now doing her own wealth management business, but she was a banker too.
So wow. So I've got two daughters, Adhira, who's 9 years old, Saisha, who's 6 years old,
Wonderful.
and my wife, Neha, who's into cosmetics, perfume for kids.
Oh, nice.
So nice. I'm glad we're exchanging notes on that too. I'm so happy. I want to meet your family very soon, all right?
Sure, Sid.
You started IndoStar Home Finance, where your initial market was South India. Why?
Yeah.
Why South India per se?
Yeah. So when we started the company, Sid, we had a parent company called IndoStar Capital, which was into commercial vehicle financing and commercial vehicle financing for the resale truck owners, right? So the truck owners who buy resale vehicles. And as you know, South is a very big market for commercial vehicle financing. And the kind of segment that I was entering into, the informal segment, who's looking at constructing a house on a plot of land, when you think of that segment, the first geography that comes to your mind is South, right? Because in South of India, in the Tamil Nadus, in the APs, in the Telanganas, people like to live in an independent house. They have a small plot, which is an ancestral plot, or a plot which, father has purchased some 15 years back. And when they get married, they decide to separate from their family, create their own family, and construct on that plot. So South India was because we were entering into a segment, which was the informal segment, looking at constructing his first house. And fortunately, because the parent was also into business, which was housed in South India, we thought, let's ride on the distribution there and start South India.
So were you always sure that you'd become a nationwide player like you're now? Or did that organically happen?
So South is when we said we will start a business from. We were very sure because having done business in the last decade in South India, I knew the markets well. I knew how the customer behaviors were, what kind of portfolio quality was getting maintained. And Sid, our business is not about giving money, it's about collecting money, right? So people think that, arey, loan dena to is not a difficult task. Imagine giving a 15-year loan to an informal customer where you have to take a monthly repayment every month for 180 months. That's how difficult the business is. So, and hence we had to choose a geography which had a history of people repaying. And South had a lot of history because the whole microfinance industry evolved from South, where the informal customers had taken small micro loans. So the fact and, the personality, just the way South Indians are, God-fearing. So we chose Tamil Nadu as our number one state.
So you saw character traits.
Yes.
You went into minute geographical details.
That's right.
So you understood the geography of it.
Yes.
But you also understood the soul of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's important to keep a balance in terms of saying, okay, these are the geographies.
Okay, along with growth,
Yeah.
some people, some organizations
Yeah.
lose their values.
Yeah.
How could you manage to stay true to your values in this whole growth process? Because, you're growing manifold. Sometimes you feel, I might have to give up this value for this growth. Did you have that internal battle too?
Not really, Sid. I think, again, it's about who I am and how I have been shaped up growing up. I think one of the things that was absolutely something that we couldn't compromise is our integrity levels, right? And I think this is a business, a lending business, where you've seen so many stories about integrity getting compromised for making quick gain. And I think what matters to all of us in this business is reputation. I think once your reputation is tarnished, it's tarnished forever, right? And so how I was brought up culturally by my parents, my early days at my first organization, I think all of this shaped up in the person that I was, the values that I believed in, and those are the values that you see on the walls right now. I think one of the values that are central to this was integrity. And so there was zero compromise on that principle of integrity, which is the foundation of how our organization was made. We said, look, we'll give you good salaries. We will give you handsome incentives, but do not try and beat the system for chasing growth. And it's very easy to do that. And so, I have this famous thing that I tell people: culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? That's a famous quote that you would have heard. And I believe in it. It's the culture that you create that determines how long the organization can go. I think the second thing that was important to us was humility. I think the kind of segment that we serve, Sid, is it's this business is no longer a business for us. It's become a passion because it's genuinely making a difference to people's lives. Imagine that maid who comes to your house, who's coming all the way from Nalasopara in a rented accommodation, not knowing what the landlord is going to do after that tenure is over. Imagine that driver who's driving your car. That's the segment that we were trying to cater. So, in trying to cater to that segment, we were very conscious of the fact that we had to stay humble. So humility in our dealings right from top is something that we were very clear on. And we said, whatever you do, even if you have to say no to that customer, you will say it in a respectful manner. I think that's the second biggest value for us. Nothing said, nothing gets achieved individually. Everything is achieved if you have the team. And so for me, the three founding principles have been integrity, your customer centricity and the humility quotient, and the teamwork.
I always tell my friends and people who work with me, it's about you being honest to what you do. That is most important.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can get things done, but your heart and your soul tells you that you've not been honest to it.
Yeah.
And over a period of time, even people can sense that.
Yeah.
I think integrity is the most underrated value that one can have, but it's actually the biggest virtue that anyone can have.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
Then 2020, pandemic. I still get goosebumps. Things were disrupted. Industries were disrupted. People were disrupted. Housing finance was disrupted, and how? I want to understand the turmoil that you must have gone through. What was that?
Sid, I can't even imagine thinking about this because I remember that day, March 22nd, if I'm not mistaken, 2020, when the lockdown began, right? And imagine being a part of a business where every single customer that you have lent to is directly going to get impacted with this particular episode, right? And we didn't even know how long it's going to last, whether it's going to be 2 weeks or 2 months or 3 months. And so the first thing that hit us was, oh, this has happened. Now we are all going to be at home. And by the way, this customer segment, we're pretty sure, has suddenly had his income stop because of the pandemic, because the nature of the business that they undertook meant that they had to go on the ground, they had to meet people, and they had to that was their livelihood. And for people like you and me, we were still getting our salaries, doing our jobs digitally, but these people, their income stopped. So I think there were two challenges at hand: to deal with that customer segment and to know what's going to be the outcome, which was an unknown. The second challenge was, what do we do with all the people who are now all in different parts of the country sitting in their houses? So your own team. And how do you engage your team in that period of time? So I think these were the two things that was playing in my mind, and I'm sure playing in most people's mind as we started that pandemic. So I think the first quarter was a very, very, very tough one because at that point of time, the Reserve Bank of India announced some measures to ensure that the borrower also gets some kind of a leeway. So we had to offer a moratorium, what is called a moratorium, which is you don't seek the EMI for that period of time, which was about 3 months. And that was officially allowed by the Reserve Bank of India. And so the customers didn't have to the burden of paying the EMI. But what the moratorium actually meant is the interest that you charge was going to get added to the principal, which you have to recover at a later point of time. So we were kind of kicking the can down the road in some sense. The first quarter was kind of taken care of. But once the lockdown was lifted, is when the real story started unfolding. And we have so many stories, Sid, I don't even know where to start. But I think those 2 years perhaps was, in some sense, in hindsight, it's great that we went through those 2 years very early in our life because it made all of us tough. It just brought out the collaborative spirit of the organization. It just brought out that never say die attitude because we had nothing to lose. We had reached a situation where we said, this is doomsday in some sense for our business. So we had nothing to lose. So we went all guns blazing when the lockdown was lifted. And today we are here to tell our story. And we did fine.
What is very important is you as a leader,
Yeah.
you obviously find your employees, your colleagues all demotivated.
Yeah.
Turbulent times, everyone's in their head thinking, ab kya hoga, job rahega ki nahi, will we be able to recover monies from our clients?
Yeah.
So many things going on. How did you as a leader at that time keep each one of them, who are your family, motivated?
So one of the things that we did immediately the week after the lockdown began was we broke ourselves into small groups. And what me and a couple of the senior members of the team is we actually decided to do a few projects that could be done while sitting at home, right? So we broke ourselves into about 12 to 15 teams, which covered, but we had about 600, 700 people in the company at that point of time. And those 15 projects had to be executed in teams by those 600 people. And then by virtue of Zoom and virtue of WebEx, we ensured that we were taking update from those 600 people in a regular cadence of a 3-day, 5-day thing. So much so that people started thinking that यहाँ पे तो और काम हो रहा है than what was happening while we were in our offices. Because every day something or the other was happening. But Sid, what happened at that point of time? Something magical happened. Our organizations, unfortunately, are structured in silos. We have a business head, we have a credit head, we have a risk head, we have an operations head. We broke all silos. And that was magical because everybody was a part of every team. And that initiative of breaking our silos and getting everybody together perhaps was the secret of the success of what we were able to not just deal with the pandemic, but what happened after the pandemic.
So you found a way not only to survive,
Yeah.
but to thrive as well.
Yes.
So that was one modus operandi.
Yeah.
Which was the other, which you could proudly say that we as a team did it during those tough times?
I think the second thing that we did is we just connected with each and every customer. We just called every customer and we actually found out what's happening on the ground. Because at such time, you tend to just get lost. You tend to get into a shell. You are focusing more internally of surviving yourself. But in our case, we knew we needed to know what's happening in his life. Because if he's doing okay, we will do okay. So what we did is each and every customer, and we had about 7,000 customers at that point of time. That was not a small number. We actually spoke to each and every customer. We understood the situation. We knew exactly how many people had lost their jobs, how many businesses were disrupted, how many people had health issues in the family. We had an exact clue of each and every customer. And each of our employees got engaged with them. I think had we not done that at that point of time, just getting more and more connected with our customers, perhaps we wouldn't have done the things that we did after the pandemic was lifted, right? So we tailored our solutions depending on the issue that the customer had. And one of the things that we did was to ensure that we give that comfort, that human touch with the customer, the humility aspect that we talked about, but we ensured that EMI started coming moment the pandemic had lifted. And we had one of the best collection rates after the pandemic. Say.
But you as a leader,
Yeah.
at different junctures, you have lessons that you keep taking away. During success, during this time, what was that lesson you took when global leaders all across did not know what was happening? What was the lesson you took away from this phase?
I think the biggest lesson was don't worry about things that you can't control. Worry about the things that are in your hand and control them well. And cut the noise. Cut the noise around you and just stay focused in one direction, which is the things that you believe in, that you should be doing at that point of time. Just execute, execute, execute. I think that was the biggest lesson, Sid, and that's a lesson that the team has really been doing ever since this company started. Is that we've had lots of ups and downs in our journey, Sid. It's not been an easy journey for us. A lot of these ups and downs had nothing to do with us, but one of the things that kept us going was the resilience. I mean, that's to my mind the biggest virtue, that the team was resilient. The team just kept executing, cut the noise, and only focus on things that you can control.
So the mantra that kept you going from struggle to success, would you clearly say it was resilience?
It is resilience. I love using the word grit because I think the biggest quality that any professional should have is being gritty. You can be the most talented guy, right? But you can succumb when you come under pressure. And you've heard so many stories of IITians and IIM Ahmedabads of the world not making it to the top, right? I think it's that the lack of grit or the lack of that emotional quotient. I think these are two important must-have qualities for any individual professional who wants to be there. You have to have a solid EQ element. IQ alone does not matter. I'm an example of that. I'm not from any of those pedigree colleges, right, in terms of the B school. But I just had belief in myself. And I knew that if you keep your heart and soul in the right place, you can achieve it. And that's the story that I tell everybody. I tell my team members, I'm just like you. You can make it to the top. You just have to have a lot of self-drive. You got to be passionate about what you're doing. That's a basic requisite. And you got to be the man when the tough times come and hit you, right? So, and that's what I look at when I hire people. I don't look at talent, skill is important, but I look at, is this guy a guy who can actually survive, the tough time? And so I ask them questions on the tough times and how they handled it, because I think it's very important to check that element of resilience and grit, especially in the leadership team. And so I think those are the three things or four things that I believe works well, said, for everybody. And I'm sure you've seen that play out for yourself as well.
I like this. So you're hiring people, you're
Yeah.
chatting with them,
Yeah.
but besides their degrees,
Yep.
you're laying focus on their personal or professional journey of tribulations.
Absolutely. And it's important to have people who've gone through ups and downs. It's important to have people with different backgrounds. Like I said, I strongly believe I'm not the most intelligent guy in the room, but I should be hiring very intelligent people around me who can give me good advice, and I can take that advice. So if you go with those principles of having different characters in your team, it's like building your cricket team. You need the Sehwags, you need the Dhonis, you also need the Kumbles, right? So that's the way I've looked at, building teams. You need people, you need different characters, but one common trait, resilience. You need people who have seen tough times and have come out of tough times.
I want to know about these stories of people who've taken loans from you. How's that story been? A story of maybe someone who totally touched your heart because you and your team helped that person.
Yeah.
Can you share a few?
Oh yes, Sid. I think quite a few stories. I think one that comes to my mind is this gentleman called Pradeep Kumar, right, in Hyderabad. And his business went through a turmoil during COVID. Turned out to be a non-performing asset. An NPA customer is like, everybody chases them with all the kind of legal tools in your hand to repossess your house and recover the principal outstanding. And the human touch in us, we knew that this is a customer who was not an intentional defaulter, right? So we sat down with him and we understood what his problems were, and we knew that we had to deal it in a more humane manner. You know what this guy does? He had a very different business. He was into a trading business when COVID hit him, and then that business went through a massive slump. And after COVID, he actually had a milk booth, right? Because he now had to survive and pay the EMIs. His milk booth flourished, and he started repaying his EMIs. So within a year and a half of him turning delinquent, he had come on track, and today he's fully repaid all his past dues and he's a normal customer. The second example I can think of is this lady borrower called Lisa Mary in Chennai. She ran a hotel. And the hotel business was the worst affected during the pandemic because that was one business that was completely shut. And so her hotel business in Chennai was largely South Indian dishes, right? Because in Chennai, South Indian dishes, pure South Indian dishes sold. But the customer behavior had changed after COVID. So what does she do? She completely changes the menu of that hotel. She introduced pav bhaji. She introduced Punjabi dishes. And suddenly the business started doing very well. So she started repaying her loans after COVID. I remember this. I mean, there are countless of stories, Sid, all very humbling. But these are a few that offhand come to my mind.
Like they say, if it had been any other route that any other financial institution had taken, they would have just said, he is not paying, I need the money.
Yeah.
You got to the core of it.
Yes.
You made him believe that, hey, I'm your friend, I'm your brother.
Yeah.
I understand that you are not in a position to pay, but niyat saaf hai, like they say.
Niyat saaf hai.
And you took the niyat wala route and realized, and he did.
Absolutely. And 99% of our customers are of that same belief. हमारे धंधे में एक चीज बोलते हैं कि is it the willingness to pay or is it the inclination to pay, right? The inclination है कि नहीं है. यहाँ पे inclination का कोई problem नहीं है, right? It is the ability that gets temporarily disrupted. किसी का रिक्शा चला रहा है, रिक्शा का एक्सीडेंट हुआ, 2 महीना he is disrupted. Somebody loses a job, maids do jobs in 5 or 6 places. एक दो जगह से job निकल गया. Temporarily the cash flows get impacted. But the best thing about this segment, they are what I call the hustlers. The segment that gets up quickly, gets into something else because they're not wedded to their job. हमारा नौकरी जाएगा तो हम सोचेंगे कि यार और करेंगे क्या लाइफ में, जिंदगी भर सिर्फ हाउसिंग फाइनेंस किया है. But these guys, they can move from businesses to businesses for survival. So that hustling part of India is what keeps India going.
What are the challenges that real estate faces? I hear a north and south pole kind of a point of view, and I get confused.
Yeah.
From your point of view, what's the biggest challenge you are facing in real estate in India?
I think the kind of affordable housing finance that we are into, I think the biggest determinant of this business is the price of the house, right? And what has happened in the last 4-5 years, particularly after the pandemic, is the price of construction has started going up. Price of cement, steel. And so the affordability of customers haven't gone up the same level as the price of the houses. So I think the real challenge for the government, for everybody to solve is, how can I keep the prices of houses real in the cities where people are flocking in, which is the urbanization that's happening, to ensure that people can actually afford buying those houses and taking those loans. For the big segment, the luxury segment, it doesn't matter. Because, in India, the top 1-2%, which is very wealthy, for them, affordability is not a problem. It's really the bottom of the pyramid and the lower income segment, which is 70% of the country, for which affordability matters, for which prices matter. That's a big area for everybody to work on. And I think one of the things for what we are doing is we are slowly moving away from the big cities and we are moving into the small towns. Because small towns is where the affordability is still there. And so whatever migration is happening from those villages into the small towns, the Bhilwaras, the Bikaners, the Nagarkoils, the Dindikals, right? The Teni, Tinkashis of the world. These are small towns, is where we are focused on because the pricing is real, the affordability is real, and so customers are able to actually own their own houses.
Okay, there's another debate that keeps going on, and I want to share that with you. So you hear the who's who giving a point of view saying, rent out houses, don't buy it. And there's another school says, buy it, don't rent it out. What do you feel about this whole concept of renting versus buying?
I think the generation is going to determine this whole concept of renting versus buying. I think the new generation pretty much are a generation that doesn't want to get locked in to a particular place. And by virtue of that, do not perhaps want to own an asset and would prefer to rent an asset because they will prefer to perhaps change geographies, change cities, even change countries, right? So I think that is a trend that is getting prevalent, especially in the big towns. The difference between the rent and the EMIs are very high. And so people would say, let me lead my life, let me go on rent at one third the cost than to actually pay an EMI and not be able to live the standard of living that I want. So again, it's the debate on affordability, right? Today, if the difference between renting a house and owning a house is going to be very high, and you want to lead your life, then you'd perhaps choose renting as an option. But I think there is no greater joy in owning your own house. Uh, वो जो खिला ठोकना है घर पे, you have to think twice because the landlord may not give you permission, right? So you want to create your home, and so if you want to create your home, you have to own your home. So I'm always an advocate that make enough money and own your own house, and we are there to give you loan.
Believe in that too. I believe in that too so much. I feel security. I feel security in the head, in the heart when you know it's your ghar.
Yeah,
No matter what happens, ye mera ghar hai, and it's always going to be like that.
absolutely.
And that, I think, is the biggest part of Indian mindsets is we like security.
That's right.
We like family. We like things being around us,
That's right.
which is also something we relate to on a daily basis. Na?
Absolutely.
I always thought in my heart, but I'm speaking out loud. Why do Indian cities don't make it to the most livable cities in the world?
Oh, that's a thing that has bothered me as well, Sid. You see the AQI numbers of Delhi just 10 days back. Even Mumbai has become more and more polluted. And I think part of the reason, if I were to attribute that, was the way we planned our townships very early on, right? I think if you look at places like Chandigarh, right, very well planned townships. There are parts of the Mysore, there are parts of the country which have been planned very well. And so, by virtue of the planning, the civic amenities and all of that, the proliferation of migrants is another big factor. Today, everybody flocks into the big four metros because the employment opportunities are in the big four metros. What you really need to do is find a solution to decongest the big four metros, decongest the top 20 cities, move employment out from the top 20 cities into the next 50, 75 cities. If you decongest the big cities, your big cities will become more livable. The pollution levels will start going down, and that will start showing impact. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in that direction, but I think the government is doing that. You would have heard about the 100 smart cities project that the government is trying to undertake. It's not an easy task. It will take years and years for the government to do that, but I think the government is in the right direction in terms of decongesting the big cities. And I think the concept of competitive federalism, which we talk about, where every state is now trying to compete with the other state. Even states like UP, Bihar, MP, right, which were earlier not that developed, today is fairly developed. So you have reverse migration happening. In fact, during the pandemic, people reverse migrated back from Gujarat, back into their hometowns and UP and in Bihar. So I think reverse migration is another important activity. Developing each of the big states in the country is a big thing. And if that happens, I'm fairly optimistic about the future, Sid, that India is going to be in a right place.
जैसे कहते हैं ना आपके मुंह में घी शक्कर. I really hope it happens, and I hope what you're saying becomes a reality very, very soon. Before we sign out, I was talking to some of your employees, and they say he breeds IndoStar Home Finance, and he motivates everyone. But I want you to say one line to all our viewers. What does IndoStar Home Finance mean to you, and what it should mean to people watching us?
IndoStar Home Finance is an emotion. It's not just a job for me. It's an emotion. It's something that keeps me awake at night, thinking about how we can take this baby that we've created to the next level. And Sid, this is just the beginning. As I said, picture abhi baki hai mere dost. We are going to do something incredibly big over the next few years. I'm fairly confident, I'm fairly excited about that journey. And we will truly make it a national brand, and a brand that all our customers can feel really proud of, and all our employees can feel proud of being associated with.
Any big announcements coming up?
There's something happening, Sid. There's something happening in December. It's a big reveal, but that's all I'll leave you with right now.
I like it, the way you've left a teaser in my head. But thanks so much, Shreejit. And I am so proud of you, not only as a friend who knows you from college days, but I'm also so proud of you that how you're making a difference to young India. You know, housing, homes are the center of our being. And you make sure it happens the right way, understanding the person or the family in front of you, which is what makes this whole home financing not a business, but it's truly the humane aspect of it. And you and your team make it happen. And that's why I feel so connected to you. Keep making India proud. Keep making the world proud. And thank you so much for
Thanks,
being you.
Sid. Thanks.
Thanks.
Pleasure chatting up with you.
Shreejit Menon.
Thank you.